Have you ever said yes to something that you know you should have said no to? Is maybe because you're feeling really guilty, or like I used to feel really scared of saying no and disappointing someone, or worse, losing my job. And that led me to burnout and overwhelm. I started to feel really resentful of people. Today I want to talk to you about why saying no feels so bad and how to start to overcome that. I'm Cecilia. I'm a career coach with a background in human resources that helps you find aligned work, helps you feel good in the work that you're doing now, and helps you start to grow in your career in a meaningful way. Let me tell you the story that really switched for me and got me into building boundaries. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that when I switched into building boundaries, I actually swung way too far into being aggressive. And that's not what I want for you. But I want to tell you the story that led me into setting better boundaries. I was working in a large organization and I had a colleague who would often ask me for little favors. And one time she sort of breezily walked into my office and asked me to take over a project that she was doing because she was feeling overwhelmed and had to take some time off. Now, I was feeling really nervous about saying no to her because she's been quite good to me before, and we were sort of colleagues and friends, and I wanted to be that dependable colleague. So I said yes. The problem was that I was already overwhelmed with my own workload and I was barely getting that done. And what I didn't realize when I said yes was that I actually didn't have the skill set to do the project she was doing. Our scopes were quite a bit different at work. And so I got stuck and put into this project that I didn't understand. I didn't get much information from her to do, and it was really outside of my skill set. I was freaking out. And that's when I started working really long hours, feeling so stressed out. I stopped being able to sleep. I wasn't spending time on myself or with my family. And it started to make me feel really resentful towards my colleague, which sucked because I really liked her. And I know she didn't mean anything bad by asking me for this. And no one even realized how much I was struggling on this. That's when I realized that if I wasn't setting boundaries and saying no to things that I couldn't do, I was actually shooting myself in my foot. Because at this point, rather than focusing on my own work, which I was really good at, I was failing at something I wasn't even responsible for. But people could see I was not performing at the level that I wanted to be performing at. So this really helped me understand that by having this yes mentality and being scared of setting boundaries, I was holding myself back from showing up as my best self professionally and in my personal life as a result of that. Have you had something like this happen for you? Maybe if you're watching this video, you've already said yes too many times. So let's talk about the psychology of why it actually feels so hard to say no. One, let's blame our culture. Let's really look at it, especially for women, but also for men. We're taught that being agreeable, accommodating means that we're more likable, means that we're really good employees by being yes people. There's that martyr story, that angel story that we want to say yes to. Or more importantly, we're scared of saying no and breaking the rules. And what does that mean? Does that then mean we're unlikable? Does that mean we're not good employees? We know that's not true because we see people who set boundaries really well and they're considered great employees. But these cultural norms and expectations are drilled so deeply in us that we have to work through understanding why we can break some of these rules and still come across very positively. The other reason it might feel so hard to say no is because you probably have a really big fear of starting conflict or getting into conflict. And that is another thing that's been drilled into us culturally, is that conflict is bad. If you're especially a woman who starts conflict, you're the B word, and we don't want to fall into that. Now, here's the thing though. Most of the time I've set a boundary or declined something at work, it did not lead to any type of conflict. In fact, 98% of the time, there was no conflict. It was very well received. But the more I was scared in the past of saying no, the more convinced I became that when I finally did it, it would lead to conflict. I was paralyzed and freaked out, but really it was all in my head. And when I learned how to say no better with kindness and clarity, it actually completely dissolved any conflict that may have happened. The third thing is the guilt that we feel when we say no. Why do we feel so much guilt? The reason we might feel so guilty about saying no, especially when we're literally saying no with very little explanation, and that's what a lot of people are suggesting we do, then that no has a very strong meaning to the recipient. Potentially quite negative meaning from childhood. It can feel like rejection. Or we might be left feeling ashamed for asking for something that maybe was reasonable or not that big of a deal in our own minds. And so as the person saying no, we know that that word can land really hard on someone. And that can cause a lot of guilt and the feeling of selfishness. The reality is that we haven't practiced saying no in a way that feels like our authentic voice, like a way that feels good to us and that builds relationships stronger. So when we can get past that, we can start to say no with so much less guilt. Is any of this sounding familiar so far? Have you felt like this at work? Now, let's talk about the shift that can happen when you learn to say no, to decline things, and to set boundaries, and how big of a gift it actually is. The first real gift of learning to set boundaries and declining requests is that you are prioritizing your own energy and your own time. And really, that is a resource that's so important at work. When you are saying no to things or declining things, you are also saying yes. You're saying yes to yourself. You're saying yes to your own priorities at work and the goals that you are meeting. What a gift. The next gift is that you can actually start to build more respect with your colleagues. Let's be honest. Most great leaders can set boundaries really well, not only for themselves, but for their employees and for their teams. That's one of the things that can make them really good leaders. And that is what I want you to cultivate for yourself and to understand that when you can speak up honestly for yourself, others will start to trust that you will be honest with them. They will trust that they know where they stand with you. And that is something that can feel quite rare at work. And lastly, this one surprised me when it showed up for me, was that you actually start to build a better yes. So when you are able to say yes, for me, I'm someone who is quite helpful. I love helping people. I bet you're like that too. And what that meant was that now I had energy and strategy to decline things, so that when I was able to say yes to something and help someone out, I could truly dive into it. And I could help them from a place of wanting to, not because I had to, not because there was resentment lurking. I got to say yes to things that I was good at, that now furthered my career, that made me look good at work because I was able to really shine. Let's get into some practical tips on how you can start to decline things that feel a little bit better. Now, again, I don't recommend fully just saying no because it can land quite hard on someone. So one way, instead of just saying no, is to offer a supportive alternative, meaning that you can say something like, I don't have time to help you with that specifically right now, but it can help you brainstorm some other solutions. Would that help? Now, that is definitely softer, and it still feels very supportive. The next is be clear with your boundaries. Saying something like, I'm at capacity right now. I'm really sorry. I can't help you with this. You never say no, but you can be very clear. If someone is especially coming back and asking you again, be clear and firm. And you can have a kind tone when you say this. I encourage that, but be firm, especially if you have someone who's said yes so many times before. That person is going to be used to you saying yes, and there might be someone coming back again. So that clarity is so helpful to them as well, knowing that there isn't a place to budge right now. One of the superpowers, I think, when setting boundaries is showing empathy, and true, real empathy, saying, I believe this is really hard for you. You're acknowledging what they might be going through, where they might be coming from. Maybe it could have been really hard for them to ask for help, or they might be in a really tough spot. So it can sound something like, that sounds really hard. I'm sorry you're going through that. I really wish I could help, which is true. Again, I love to help. Unfortunately, I am so busy with my workload right now, I won't be able to help you. That can go a long way in someone feeling at ease and good, even though you're declining their request. Now, lastly, I always recommend to start small. So if it feels daunting, you probably are watching this video because you have someone making requests, crossing your boundaries that feels really awful. That's not where you want to start practicing this skill yet. What you want to go is into low stakes situations where you would have tended to say yes, and start to practice these ways and how you're going to decline and say no. Find your voice in that. Practice. My experience, the results are going to really help you see that it's not that scary. So to wrap it up, saying no doesn't mean you're letting people down. It's not selfish. When you're using clarity and kindness and avoiding the word no, you're actually building trust and respect with others. Now, if this is sounding like something you want to know more about, I've created a free guide to help you to say no without ever saying no. There's scripts in there, and there's more explanation why no can feel so hard to say. Download it below, and like and subscribe this video if you want to see more like this.